this time.
New this morning, Governor Tony Evers discussing his priorities before he leaves office. One of his top issues is closing Green Bay Correctional. State lawmakers on both sides have been calling for the closure, but haven't been able to agree on a budget and timeline.
Governor Evers had said he hoped to close the prison by 2029. So far, his administration and the Republican-led legislature have agreed and approved to use $15 million to plan for GBCI's closure. But the governor says that if no progress on the prison's closure is made soon, people can expect major delays.
If there's no additional action taken yet this session, then once that $15 million in planning dollars is exhausted, work on designing and building DOC facility projects will stop.
State Senator Andre Jacques has said in the past that his concerns stem from a lack of information on how tax dollars will be spent, but that he does support the idea of closing GBCI as soon as possible. At that same press conference, Governor Evers says he's, quote, very concerned about immigration officials targeting farm workers, especially as arrests ramp up across the Midwest.
And he says his team is keeping an eye on an ICE presence in the state. According to the most recent data, a UW-Madison School for Workers survey found 70% of labor on Wisconsin dairy farms is performed by people living in the country illegally.
I can probably say in my sleep, you know, our state will be destroyed economically if suddenly we decide anybody undocumented is going home or has to leave Wisconsin.
When asked if ICE is welcome in Wisconsin, Governor Evers told us he doesn't see the need for the federal government to come here. He believes the state can handle immigration enforcement itself.